So in this Hunter x Hunter video, we're going to do a little bit of speculation. Kind of like the previous video where I was sort of determining who I thought was going to win the Succession War contest. This one, we're going to try to figure out whether or not Hisoka is on the Black Whale boat. Now, for simplicity reasons, I broke it down into 3 answers. Either 1, he's not on the boat and he's trolling everyone, which I wouldn't put past Togashi. I mean, he's had a lot of situations in the manga that are kind of trollish in a way. I mean, the fact that Hisoka and Chrollo were going to fight for the first time, and then it turned out that Chrollo couldn't even use his Nen, so then we kind of got a little pulled in by that one. I wouldn't put it past Togashi to just have Hisoka not even be on the boat, and then you got all the spiders looking for him and wasting their time. However, I would still say it's the least likely possibility. Now, the second possibility is that Hisoka is on the boat, but we haven't seen him yet. And the third possibility is that Hisoka is on the boat, but he's using Texture Surprise to disguise himself as someone else. Now, according to the Hunterpedia, Texture Surprise is a method in which Hisoka can apply his aura to any smooth, flat surface, such as paper or cloth, and manifest imagery on its change in appearance and texture. He can replicate over 1,000 different textures. He has tricked Nen users of the spider's caliber with his ability, with none of them realizing he had used it, either by sight or by touch. Now, in the past, we saw this in action when he had the spider emblem on his back and then he took it off, basically revealing that he was a faux spider all along. Now, this came into effect in the most recent arcs when he fought Chrollo. Now, after their battle, it was thought that Hisoka was dead. We saw his face mangled, he was missing body parts, and yeah, the spiders just kind of left him and thought it was all over. But through the use of his Nen ability, he was able to revive himself and come back to life, as it were. Now, instead of taking advantage of Machi's healing abilities, he used Texture Surprise to make himself look like he was normal once again. So he took this and made this out of it. Now, the implications behind this is that not only could he use Texture Surprise to make himself look like he's normal again, he could use it to disguise himself as someone else and trick people into believing that he's this different person. Now, who would he disguise himself as? Who would be the most likely candidate? Now, for this, we have to take into consideration that Hisoka is a rather large man. So it has to be an individual that is relatively tall, and there's one person in particular that we've seen on the boat that seems to have a very tall appearance and already has the ability to use Nen and is a part of the Hunter Association. And that is none other than the bodyguard for the 13th Prince, Mariam, Bellorant. Now, to substantiate this point, let's go through a couple of the panels here and try to investigate what sort of clues he's giving off in terms of his speech and in terms of his actions and mannerisms that might lead us to believe that he could be Hisoka. Now, the first piece of evidence happens in chapter 369, in which Queen Zavanti says, "Listen in on everything he says, down to the nitty-gritty. Find out if he's teaching Nen correctly and report back to me." And Bellorant thinks to himself, "Hoof, hoof, hoof. Nitty-gritty. That was pretty cute." Now, the coy laughter and the sarcasm seems to match up with Hisoka's personality. It seems like a very Hisoka-ish thing that he would think here. So, obviously, this is not enough information to make a conclusion about that, but it's at least one piece of evidence that works in our favor. Now, in chapter 370, we see all the bodyguards from the other princes that want to learn Nen. Now, among all these bodyguards, we see only a couple that are relatively tall. One in particular is Bellorant, who's standing at the back and is noticeably taller than everyone else. And we already know for certain that Hisoka is one of the tallest characters in Hunter x Hunter. Now, during the teaching session, Kurapika says, "Among the 16 of you, is there anyone that can already use Nen? Please raise your hands." And immediately the first person that raises his hands is Bellorant. Now, why is this important? Well, although Hisoka is a very deceptive person, it's very much in line with his personality to just kind of tell you what he's gonna do and how he's gonna do it, and still humiliate you right in front of your face. I mean, when he fought in Heaven's Arena against Castro, he willingly allowed him to chop off one of his arms just for the sake of learning his Nen ability and kind of toying with him in a sense. So it's kind of in line with his personality to just kind of allow people to have this false sense of security and this false sense of advantage and still trick them nonetheless and be able to defeat them. So it totally seems in line with Hisoka's personality. Now, shortly after that moment, Berenjen starts to suffocate due to silent majority. Now, one of the first people to go to Berenjen's aid is Bellarant. And even after Sakata shoots him, Bellarant is still staring down at the body as if he's trying to investigate it for clues as to what just happened. And this is very indicative of someone who knows what they're doing and is a hunter and is looking for the root cause. And Hisoka, being a skilled hunter, would definitely want to do that. Now, afterwards, he said, he could have still been breathing, but you're the one that killed him. And we see the little heart at the end of his statement. Now, Hisoka has done this before, where at the end of his statements, he has a little heart at the end. So, is that Togashi's way of saying that Bellarant and Hisoka are the same person? Or is he just trying to make us think that to throw us off the trail? Who knows? Now, in chapter 376, Muhan is killed by silent majority while in the toilet. Now, while the others are blaming Kurapika for the incident, Bellarant takes a different tact. Coming into the enemy's territory and then going to the bathroom, don't you think that was far too careless? The first incident with Berenjen was certainly an ambush, but I think the incident here was simply negligence. First off, the lectures only last 2 to 3 hours. For that period, it's not too much for us to be by the book security guards and be alert and vigilant, is it? We've already split up into 3 groups, so if each of us looks out for one another and act together, there's no way this type of attack will be able to work on us, right? So he's demonstrating that he's a cool-headed man who seems to have been through similar situations in the past. He seems like he has a lot of experience that he's drawing upon. Someone like Hisoka, possibly. Now, this defense of Kurapika is also an interesting little dynamic because, as we know from the York New City arc, those two already work together, so they're definitely not averse to sort of teaming up and sharing a common interest. Even though their personalities and their outlook on taking care of things may differ, they certainly don't have any qualms with teaming up and making use of each other's information and tactics. So this wouldn't be the first time that these two work together. And then my final pieces of information in terms of Bellarant possibly being Hisoka is some of the imagery that you see right here. Now, I did not create this imagery. This was created by someone else. But it is rather interesting to note how the nose of Bellarant does seem kind of awkward. Like, the way that it's shaped, how it's so wide and it kind of makes this triangle pattern is kind of interesting when you compare it to Hisoka after he lost his nose in the fight with Chrollo. And then this other image right here is really interesting. I'll just read through it. Now, Hisoka looked like this, and he can change his face whenever he wants. Hisoka and Bellarant are over 190 centimeters tall, which I already mentioned. Bellarant is a hunter, so he can use Nen. At first, he admits he knows Nen, and many times he emerges in the frame more than necessary, in my opinion. Yeah, sometimes it does seem like Togashi is sort of pinpointing him, trying to make an emphasis, trying to make him pop out, as it were. And the way that Hisoka's hair is sort of combed back almost kind of looks like Bellarant's just a bit, you know? Like, Bellarant's is a little different, but the way it's kind of combed backwards in the fronts kind of looks similar, and it looks like it might be relatively the same length. Now, at the beginning of the video, I suggested that there were 3 possibilities. Well, upon doing a little bit more research, there's a 4th one online that seems to have a little bit of evidence behind it. And that being that Hisoka is disguised as Illumi. Now, the bulk of this information comes from a website called Otaku Fantasy, so if you want to see more about it, go there. Now, they based it off of a couple pieces of evidence. The first one being the Hunter x Hunter Volume 36 cover. Now, if you look right here, you see the Phantom Troop surrounding Illumi. Illumi's in the center, holding a flower. Now, the idea here is that the other flowers represent the departed Phantom Troop members. Now, if that's the case, Illumi holding one of the flowers means that he has blood on his hands, that he was the one that instigated all of their deaths. And if he happens to be Hisoka in disguise, that would certainly be true. Because even though he didn't directly kill all those spiders, he had a hand in it by helping out Kurapika. Illumi, like Hisoka, is a relatively tall man. He's not the same height, he's 185 centimeters, not 190 centimeters, but their height is close enough where, you know, if you're just kind of looking at them and you're not paying close attention, it's kind of hard to distinguish between them. And then the other piece of evidence they point to as well is that when Mizai was questioning Illumi requested that he be put in a solitary cell with a shower. Now, why would Illumi request a shower? The Zoldycks are accustomed to being tortured and being placed under conditions that are subhuman, so a shower seems a little bit uncharacteristic of him. For Hisoka, on the other hand, we had that one scene in the Greed Island arc where Hisoka was bathing in some random pond. So cleanliness is really important to Hisoka. So maybe that's pointing to the fact that actually Illumi is Hisoka in disguise. And probably the biggest piece of evidence that Hisoka is disguised as Illumi is that he would be under the spider's noses this whole time, pretending to be a spider for a second time. I mean, to trick him twice? That would just be like the ultimate con over right there. So tell me what you guys think of these theories. I think they're all relatively interesting. If I had to put my money on one, I would say that Hisoka is Bellaraint, but you guys might think differently. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.